there.
Well, yeah, and then like I said before, is like you can fully disagree with me about a movie, like, or why you liked it or didn't like it, and that's totally fine as long as you can express reasons. But when you say bullshit like that, that's when it's like, no, dude, you're an idiot. So,
yep.
All right. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Bored as Hell podcast. I'm Adam McDonald with Big Shiny Robot.
And I am Andy Wilson, aka Citizen Bot, also a Big Shiny Robot.
And we're here in the very last little bits of August, and as you know from previous weeks, it's been a pretty uneven month. Most movies that have come out have been a bit lower on the quality scale than what we'd hoped for. This week, there was some good and there was some bad, but only two movies. So the two we want to talk about are No Escape and We Are Your Friends. I'm going to let Andy take over for No Escape because that was when you reviewed for Big Shiny. Give us some information about that.
Sure. No Escape is the story of a family played here by Owen Wilson and Lake Bell. They're an American couple, their kids in tow, relocating from Austin, Texas to an unnamed Southeastern Asian country. It was filmed on location in Thailand, so that area of the world, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia. While on their plane, they befriend, in the row behind them, a rugged, suave Pierce Brosnan, who knows a little bit about the country. He says he's been there before, implies that he's going there for sex tourism. Woohoo!
Ooh, the brothels, the brothels!
And when they land, they're in a little bit of a culture shock. Things don't seem to be working as they expected. He helps them get to their hotel, get settled, and no sooner are they there than all hell breaks loose. A long-running military dictator for the country has been assassinated. There's been a coup, and people are roaming through the streets, rounding up foreigners and chopping their heads off. It gets really bloody really fast, and as the name implies, they, as a family, have to get the hell on up out of there. So that is the basic premise. This movie is very well done in a lot of ways, very intense. I spent a lot of the movie with a knot in my stomach, just feeling the tension that they were building, because they're being followed at all points. I mean, you can imagine.
Yeah, there's no rest in this movie. Once it starts and gets going, like it's a roller coaster till the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to spot them. The blonde-haired, blue-eyed Owen Wilson in Southeast Asia, who stands, probably a half a foot taller than most of the people and looks very different than everyone else. So they've got to find a way to escape. And that they find that to be very tough. But I mentioned the violence. It is needlessly violent and bloody in a lot of ways. They didn't have to go to the lengths that they did, including a very trying rape scene, to get their point across of the kind of peril that the family was in. I think they could have built the tension in a lot of better ways. And it just, as you mentioned, Adam, this movie never gives you a chance to breathe. And they try and take these little breaks and inject humor and family moments where you're supposed to laugh and hear their backstory. But I just spent the whole time going, you idiots, they're right behind you. Quit talking and yammering and get on out of there. So it's, the tension builds and builds and builds to absolutely nothing. Normally there's some sort of a payoff, and this just didn't. So I walked out of the theater with a migraine, and that's kind of how I feel about it. And the way that they treated I was going to say the way they treated the Asian characters, but there are no Asian characters.
No.
There are caricatures and just random people. So while the violence towards the white Westerners in this movie is played for horror and shock value. The native, whoever, Thai, Cambodian, Laotian,
I think they kind of agreed it was Cambodia.
with,
Yeah.
yeah, they're dispatched with, no forethought whatsoever, and it's just, it leaves you thinking like only the Western American lives are really what matters here.
Yeah, I think we were joking afterwards that the hashtag for this movie should be only White Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, you brought some really good points. It's, as far as the directing and cinematography, great parts. I mean, he does a great job. John Eric Dowdle was the director. It's fantastic. I mean, he brings you in. It's gorgeous to look at. Like you said, there's a lot of tension built up. But it's kind of funny. I was just remembering in a review, and what we talked about as well was that if this had been a zombie movie, it would have been perfect, because that's what it felt like. It felt like you were watching a horror movie, and we mentioned that you're killing off the Asian characters. It was like Asian whack-a-mole. I mean, there was no attempt to even talk about any kind of character development, because the bad guy was just a faceless person with a gun. And even as Pierce Brosnan mentioned, 2/3 of the way through the movie, it's their fault for what's happening. It was the American and the UK government going over there and starting this water project that started this coup and got the whole ball rolling. So of course these people are upset, because we're coming over there to pretty much bankrupt their company or their country.
Yeah.
So
it's the movie just grinds to a complete halt too when Pierce Brosnan, James Bond himself, goes on like a minute 90-second rant about the perils of Western interventionism and, oh, what a fool I've been, and how we started this war, and oh, these evil corporations that run our government that pay my salary, that it falls really flat. And what could have been a very important and deft message about how American imperialism
it becomes pandering.
The world, it's beyond heavy-handed. It makes heavy-handed movies look very deft by comparison.
Yeah, the Pierce Brosnan character, pops up in the first 5 minutes of the movie, and you don't see him again until Deus Ex Machina comes in and saves the day at a brothel, nonetheless. That's the only safe place, is the brothel.
Of course.
And yeah, you mentioned like they try to stop every so often to create these little family moments. I'm sorry, but if there's someone with a gun on your trail, or a tank, GTFO, you're not going to sit there and like, let's give everyone hugs. And Owen Wilson, you're not a leading action star. You spent half the movie acting like you were in a Wes Anderson film, and the other half, someone needs to teach him that whispering's not acting. Lake Bell was perfectly fine. I think she was the best character of all of them.
I loved Lake Bell, yeah.
Yeah. The kids, though, those little kids, I know the whole point was to have this family in peril and make you want to connect with them. Like, oh my God, these poor little girls. I wanted to I was like, shoot them. Just get them out of the way. Like when there's men chasing you with guns, you don't pay any attention to your daughter who's crying because she left her stuffed animal on the floor. I'm sorry, sweetie, the stuffed animal doesn't matter. And they were grating. No, there's just, if it would have been a horror movie, if it would have done things differently, it could have been really cool. It ends up just being casually racist, and as intense as some parts are, just forgettably boring. I'm at a 3. It wasn't good for me.
Yeah, I went with a 4, and the only difference really for me was Lake Bell, who I just continue to love. Anybody who has not seen her movie In a World, about the world of trailer voiceovers, go check that out. Love you, Lake Bell. You're awesome.
You were the only good thing in this movie.
Yes.
You're responsible for my 3 stars.
Yep.
So the other big release, and actually if we're looking at box office numbers, I think it now holds the record as the worst opening for any movie that opened in over 2,000 theaters. So
wow.
We Are Your Friends. It's the Zac Efron Wants to Be a DJ movie. Now, I'll tell you this, from the trailers I saw, the TV spots, everything about this movie just screamed suck. I had no desire to see it. I was like, well, that's one of the things is like, we go see bad movies so you don't have to. And I know I'm in the minority in this, but I walked out, in spite of myself, enjoying it. The plot line's not that deep. I said Zac Efron, he's a wannabe DJ. He and his friends promote this local club, and he guest DJs there every so often. Well, while he's out back smoking weed, he runs into Cole. Excuse me. Oh, what's the name? James Reed, who's played by Wes Bentley, and Wes Bentley's always good. James Reed appeared in EDM, which is electronic dance music world, as a DJ, and kind of just does his own thing now. And meets this random stranger. They share some drugs and go to a party, because I guess that's what you do in Hollywood. And they go to this party. The next day, Cole wakes up at Reed's house and runs into his assistant/girlfriend, Sophie, who is the wonderful Emily Ratajkowski of Gone Girl. So if you saw that movie, you know how slinky minxy she was over there. Anyways, the sparks kind of fly between the two of them, and the kind of budding romance develops under Reed's nose. He takes Cole under his wing and basically says, "Look, you need to make yourself your first big track. All your music, the stuff you give me, it's just the same old electronic recordings and sounds. It's nothing original." He tells him, which is in the trailer, stop being an imitation and find your signature. So he challenges him to go out and kind of, record, real sounds and create his, first big breakout hit. And it kind of goes on from there. I mean, the plots, there really isn't much in the way of plot. It's just one person kind of finding out how life's supposed to go, learning lessons, and kind of, I guess you really can't say growing up, because the characters, the movie ends almost where it begins. It's months later. Things have changed. People have died. Some lessons were learned. But what was kind of cool about it was, the big payoff in the end. When the credits roll, wasn't that Zac Efron's character was now this massively wealthy and popular DJ. He had one good song that people seemed to like a lot, but he actually gained wisdom. And so in that sense, it's kind of a coming of age story, even though the characters are all already in their 20s and, doing things like drugs and promiscuous, sleeping around with people that maybe isn't really, smiled upon in society, but they became better people from the experiences they had. Zac Efron is great in it. I mean, he's really growing up into be a decent actor. He's not the sugary sweet kid from High School Musical, and he's definitely not the douchebag kind of kid, frat boy from Neighbors. So he was great in it. Of course, like I said, Wes Bentley is always good in everything he does. I will caution you, though, if you do not like electronic dance music, just stay the hell away from this one, because the whole soundtrack is that. If you do like it, it's got a great soundtrack. It's a lot of fun. I don't think it deserved the hate it's getting. I think people went in wanting to hate it because that's what they were expecting. So I ended up with a 7 out of 10. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, the movie studios here in Austin trolled me, and they did the screenings for We Are Your Friends and No Escape literally in the same theater across from each other. And so we had to choose one or the other, and I'd already said yes to No Escape, and we actually gave out passes to it here in Austin. So I was like, well, I really got to do that. I like Zac Efron, and in a way, this sounds a little bit like another underappreciated movie he was in, Me and Orson Welles, where it is, and it's also a coming of age story about, he's a musician and an actor and trying to come up, and at the end he hasn't really learned any lessons. He hasn't become great, because the movie was about Orson Welles, not him. But yeah, that was fun. I think I'm gonna have to check this one out on your recommendation.
Yeah, well, the way it's going, it'll either be in dollar theaters or out on DVD within a month. So I mean, there's I wouldn't, if you really love Zac Efron and you love that kind of music, by all means check it out. I do. But it's doing so badly that I don't see it being in theaters much longer. Not that there's that much other really high-end stuff coming out in the next couple of weeks. It's still a pretty slow month. But yeah, it doesn't deserve the hate it's getting. It is predictable. I mean, the moment the movie starts, you know where it's going to end. You know, you even know who's going to die, who's going to do this, what's going to happen here. So it's very predictable, but I mean, it's not done in a bad way. I mean, there's some really I forgot really good effects that they do. So the director was Max Joseph. He also wrote it. He's mostly well known for being involved in co-hosting the MTV series Catfish. But he does some amazing cinematography in it where when Reed and Carter first meet for the first time and go to this party, they end up doing PCP and he doesn't know he did it. So there's all art gallery and, Zac Efron's just like character's freaking out because he's walking around and, the eyes and all the paintings are like looking at him and he'd look over and they go back to be normal. So it's almost like when you go to Disneyland and you're in the Haunted Mansion, the bus kind of follow you around. But it's animated to make the audience kind of experience what he is. And then all of a sudden, when he finds out what happens, the paintings kind of start to melt like crayons, and the ink goes over, hits everyone, and turns them into animated versions of themselves. So they're this really crazy art gallery. Everyone's turned into a cartoon and dancing, and the music's playing, and the words are actually popping up on the screen. So it was really cool. I wish they would have used that more or used a similar kind of style because that kind of trick was only used twice in the movie. It really does stand out when it happens, so maybe that's why they wanted to go with kind of the less is more idea. But visually, it's great to watch. The animation style is awesome. I'll be interested to see what he does next. So,
oh, that's really interesting. That sounds a lot like whenever I listen to a Skrillex record. So,
yeah, cool. Well, speaking of music, We Are Your Friends, the whole background of having of the soundtrack and the songs, it's very integral to the plot and the movie itself, and you can kind of see how the characters evolve and change through the music that's playing in the background. So Andy and I were just thinking about something we could recommend this week with so few movies out, and we were deciding movies that have really influential soundtracks on the actual movie itself. We decided we couldn't go with any kind of musical because that's the whole point of a musical, is to have songs sung through to move the plot along. We also disqualified Quentin Tarantino movies because that'd just be too easy. I mean, we could sit here and have about 20 podcasts just about the music of Tarantino alone. But we did come up with two movies. And Andy, you ended up going with, which one was it again?
I went with the Coen brothers, "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?"
Yes.
Their 2000 adaptation, somewhat, of Homer's The Odyssey, about George Clooney as a man escaped from prison with John Turturro and oh shoot, what's his name? Who's the other guy chained to them?
Oh crap, I am.
Oh, John Turturro and Tim Blake Nelson chained to him, and so they escaped from prison. And he's trying to make it home to stop his wife from getting married. And along the way, they face many different things. One of which is on their way, they meet a young man who sold his soul at the crossroads to learn how to play guitar. And so to make some money, they go in and record an album, which is "I'm a Man of Constant Sorrow." It becomes a hit in the Depression era South and propels them to a little bit of fame, which they then use to their advantage by the end of the movie. But it's all about the journey, not the destination, literally. And along the journey, this movie is punctuated by just some of the best music out there. I mentioned "I'm a Man of Constant Sorrow," but I don't like bluegrass music in general. I'm not really a fan of country. I do like a little bit of it, but this movie, I love this soundtrack, and the way that they're able to bring things in that both fit very tonally with what the Coen brothers are doing visually, and also move the story along. So they come upon a group of people who are supposed to be like the Lotus Eaters from Homer's Odyssey, and they're all being baptized in the river, and they start singing "I Go Down to the River to Pray," and it's great.
I believe it was Alison Krauss did that, didn't she?
Yeah, Alison Krauss did that. Alison Krauss was on 2 or 3 of the different songs here, and many of her stable of backup musicians. Her main guitar player, whose name escapes me, is actually the guy who does George Clooney's singing in the movie in "I'm a Man of Constant Sorrow." So there's just some other great things. "You Are My Sunshine" was a song that was popular then. If you've ever seen the movie Primary Colors with John Travolta, as he goes around campaigning, he always campaigns with "You Are My Sunshine" and talks about it being his favorite song written by a Southern governor. So whether that's true or not, that was immediately something I'm like, oh, it's "You're My Sunshine" in another movie. Just lots of great music, and it took what would have been a great movie and elevated it to just the next level. The songs that they're singing while they're out on the work line, "Poor Lazarus," to the song that the hangman, or he's not the hangman, I guess, or is he? That singing as they're about to be executed for their.
I think it's a hangman. Yeah, I haven't watched the movie in forever, but it is one of my. I could easily say it's my top 10 films of all time.
Yeah, I love that movie. The summer of 2001, after that came out on DVD, literally that movie played at least once every 24 hours in my apartment. Either I or one of my roommates watched it, and it was one of those things where it's like, if someone had it on, it was just on in the background, and like you go make lunch, and sit down and watch it for 10 minutes and then walk away. And it was like the soundtrack of that time, but it was also a movie that we constantly watched, and really sticks with you. So yeah, I love that soundtrack, and it really took that movie to the next level.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's like you mentioned, it's a fantastic film. I mean, the Coen brothers doing an amazing job, but the addition of that, you can almost say the music is the soul of that movie.
Yeah,
because as much as there's so much going on, you've got it's a brilliant retelling of the Iliad and the Odyssey, but it's one of those things where the music is what ties it all together and elevates it from just a great movie to a classic. So my movie, it's a little bit more predictable. I went with Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't think I need to spend too much time jumping into explaining the plot, because it was the biggest movie of last year, so I'm pretty sure everyone's seen it. If you haven't, it's fantastic. Go and get it. But the reason why the music in that is so important is the story of Peter Quill, Star-Lord, being kidnapped from Earth as a young kid, and so the music he has on his awesome mixtape Volume 1. It does 2 purposes. One, it's his last tie to Earth. So all these songs are the only thing that kind of lets him keep his humanity, because it's all that ties him back to this planet that he hasn't seen for decades. And then 2, it's the last remembrance of his mother, who passes away in the opening minutes of the movie. So these combine just to really form his character. And when you listen to the songs throughout it, even when they're doing like a movie montage to set up and they're going to go fight, Ronin, and they're playing Cherry Bomb by what's the name of the band? Crap.
The Runaways.
The Runaways, thank you. So when they're playing Cherry Bomb by the Runaways, or Hooked on a Feeling, or just pretty much everything on there, it perfectly sets every single scene up, and it really shows who Peter Quill is, because he's been molded by this music his whole life. And so even though it's only the same 13 songs he's been listening to for 30 years or 20 years, it explains his personality and who he is. And what's really interesting about this movie was that James Gunn, who, if you haven't seen his previous work, I mean, check him out. I mean, when they said James Gunn was doing Guardians of the Galaxy, I was ecstatic, because I loved he helped write some stuff for Troma. He did Slither, which is to this day one of the funniest horror movies ever made.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, such a fantastic and horror. It's a bad B movie horror movie, but it knows that, so it's having fun with it. It's basically kind of sending off the entire genre. So when I heard he was involved, I was like really happy for it. And it's interesting because he actually designed and wrote a lot of the scenes based on the music he was going to be playing in that scene. So before, with the opening sequence with "Gotta Get Your Love," originally was going to be for "Hooked on a Feeling," and that got moved over to the prison area or the prison scene. But so if you look and see how the shots are choreographed, how the actors are doing and saying certain things or moving, it's because they were working to the soundtrack first and not so much the movie. So it's kind of a backwards take of how they do movies. Most times they'll write it, shoot it, and then score it afterwards. But because the music was so important, they had it playing on the set the whole time. In fact, Chris Pratt, the whole time he was there, was listening to the Awesome Mixtape, the whole shooting thing. So I'm sure he's pretty sick and tired of those songs. But it was a movie that was fully based and kind of raised on the foundation of the soundtrack, which, like I said, is very rare for a movie nowadays. So again, it's all classic 70s and 80s music. So it's really, really good music. But because that it was the foundation of this film and not the other way around, that kind of gets it on my list. And what's really interesting, I forgot about this, was that on Record Store Day last year, Disney actually released the Awesome Mix Volume 1 on cassette. It was the first time they had released a soundtrack or a cassette at all on cassette since 2003. So it's kind of funny that a movie about a talking raccoon in a tree would have them release their first cassette album in over 10 years.
Yeah, it was just such a cool soundtrack. The moment I was sold on Guardians of the Galaxy was that first opening sequence. Mm-hmm. And as he's walking in on Morag, and he puts on that Walkman, and it goes down, 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 and he starts dancing, and the first thing he goes, "Hey!" and the big thing, the Guardians of the Galaxy splashes across, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this movie is going to be great. What is this? This is awesome. That soundtrack meant so much to me when it came out, because some of the songs ended up being really, really personal and hard hitting. I had a really rough time about the 2-week span before Guardians came out. Just a ton of really, really stressful things at work. And I was working 70-hour weeks, and it was super high pressure. And so I sat in my car listening to "Ooh Child, Things Are Gonna Get Easier" over and it's just okay, things are gonna be okay. It's gonna be all right. I'm gonna do this. We're gonna be all right. And then I saw the movie, and that ended up being the song that saves the galaxy, because he challenges Roman to a dance off. Yeah, so that's one of my go-to karaoke songs now at this point, because it just, and you bring it down hard and someday, yeah.
Oh, I'll never forget. It was at FanX 2014. It was the last day, so the thing was all broken down, and all of us went over to, I can't remember the name of the bar, but it was me, Eddie, Jeremiah, all the Geek Show guys were there. So Shannon, Jimmy, Jeff was with us still, Lee and Carrie, and we were out in the patio. And we went to the secondary bar area, and they had a jukebox out there. And all of a sudden, and this is before the movie had come out, we'd only really seen the first trailer, which had "Hooked on a Feeling." And Maya runs over to us with this gleam in his eye, "Hey guys, guess what?" We're like, "What?" And all of a sudden we heir the "Ooga chaka, ooga." And we all got in a circle, and we all just took over that bar, and all of us just did our own impromptu karaoke of the whole song, and it was an incredibly fun memory. And I can't think of the last time that a movie soundtrack, at least, brought out just a sense of that unfettered joy in people. I mean, because the sound, now we're all familiar with the songs, but I think before that, when we heard the soundtrack or you heard on the whatever, you recognized them, but it wasn't like you're like, oh crap, I know that song. Where's it from?
Yeah.
And of course now it's now part of the the general public's consciousness. But so yeah, just really good songs. Just like the movie set. Like when I got out of that movie, I had the biggest smile on my face because it was just full of joy. And that's what that soundtrack is for me, is just really, really just a happy, joyous thing. So like you mentioned when you were, before the movie came out and you were in your car, it's it's gonna get better, it's gonna get better. It's one of those soundtracks you can put on that's gonna make your day better, because you can't help but sing along and smile with them. So
with two exceptions, I to this day cannot stand the Pina Colada song or 10cc I'm Not in Love. It's like those two songs, just no. It's okay. I realize their place in the movie and I respect it, but I skip those songs because I'm like, no, still hate them. Nope.
Well, what's really funny is everyone knows the Pina Colada song, but it wasn't until this movie came out that I actually had the soundtrack and sat down and listened to the lyrics. It's a horrible song. It's about infidelity. I had no clue about that. I always thought it was just, oh yeah, Pina Coladas. No, it's about people cheating on each other with each other.
Well, and that's why that was the first. The first reference I ever had to that song was in Shrek. Believe it or not, I didn't know about that song, and they're like talking about the princesses that he's going to that he could date. And Princess Fiona is like, she likes pina coladas and taking walks in the rain. And I'm like, what the heck? And my stepmom's like, oh, that's a movie, or that's a song reference. That's a song from the 70s. And I went and searched it out, and I'm like, that's a terrible song.
I know.
What is that?
Yeah, it's always fun to kind of go back and because half the time when songs are on in the car or you're driving, and the songs you've heard a million times, but you never actually sat and thought about what it's saying. And like a big one was "Pumped Up Kicks" by Foster the People. Dude, it was everywhere and it was catchy. And you're singing along, and then you go back and realize it's about a school shooting.
Yeah,
it's this upbeat, happy song about it's from the point of view of the shooter. So I think it's music is great because it really not only does it set the mood, it can be it can become the soundtrack of your own life. But it's easy to kind of gloss over and not realize what's happening and what's taking place because it's catchy and you're humming along.
Well, if you think about it, Hooked on a Feeling, the way it was used in Guardians of the Galaxy, that's a pretty horrific scene if you think about it.
Oh, no, it's horrible.
And brutalized going into jail, but they're playing Hooked on a Feeling. Da, da, da. And it's just oh, that was terrible. And if they hadn't lightened it up right there, that movie would have gotten really dark really fast.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. It's you can have a really horrible scene, and if you have the right kind of mood behind, the mood with the music over it, it can change how you feel about what's happening on the screen. So you can kind of it's a spoonful of sugar with your medicine. You can accept it easier because you've got something kind of fun to go along with it. So, so hopefully you've seen both those movies. If you haven't, just go out and buy them. I mean, Guardians is probably still $20, but I know you can get Oh Brother Where Art Thou probably for $5 at Walmart or Best Buy. So
yeah,
definitely check them out. They're really good, not just for the music, but also just filmmaking in general. They're fantastic movies. So that's about all we have for you this week. So look forward to talking to you next Monday. Really slow week again. We're still in the dumping ground. So we have A Walk in the Woods, which is the Robert Redford, Nick Nolte kind of action-adventure comedy, which looks kind of interesting. It could be fun. And then The Transporter Refueled, which we're not screening up here. So anytime they decide not to screen a movie, it's foreboding. We'll just say that. So I don't know if they're doing it in Austin, but I know they're not doing it up here. So
I'm not getting to see it. I am getting to see A Walk in the Woods. I'm excited about it just because it's like, hey, two old guys are gonna go camping and they have no business being out in the wilderness together.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So I mean, it could be fun. I mean, it looks interesting. It's got Emma Thompson, and she's always great. So hopefully we'll be back here a week from now, spouting the wonders of Walk in the Woods.
I hope it's good. So.
Yeah. All right, Andy, go ahead and take us out.
Oh, that Owen Wilson. So hot right now. So hot.
Hail Satan and have a lovely afternoon.